Okay, I'm going to be going through a few rational graphs and how to sketch them. They are going to repeat itself quite often, as in the steps are going to be repeated several times. So you can fast forward, you can also pause at your own time to sketch and check the answers. So let's go ahead and do our very first rational graph. So as we have mentioned before, it's very important to find the asymptotes and one point. So the first step is to obtain the vertical asymptote. And how do we do that? We do that by looking at the denominator of this fraction of this rational function, and the value that x cannot take is what we call a vertical asymptote. Second step is to obtain the horizontal asymptote. Over here we realize that this fx that's given to us is of an improper form. So because of that, we need to do a long division, and this is how we do it. Take your time to revisit. Now what we have done is to then rewrite fx in terms of 2 minus 1 over x minus 1. So this is its proper form, and what this really means is that if our x tends to an exceptionally large number, so for example, tends towards positive infinity or negative infinity, we already know that if the numerator is a real value, there is no way this fraction can equals to 0. So there's no way it can be equals to 0, which also means that consolidating it all, fx, there is no way that 2 can exactly happen. So if something does not happen in a graph, it tends very close to it, but does not touch it, we call this the asymptote. And that's how we arrive at y equals to 2 being its asymptote. It's horizontal asymptote. So this is the part that you might want to take note a little bit more. Now let's go on to step 3. Step 3 is simple. Now that we have gotten 2 of its asymptotes, we just need to obtain 1 point to know how the graph looks like. So substitute any convenient points, and in this case, you can find its x and y intercepts. And once we place all the asymptotes and the known points, the computed points on the graph, we can sketch the rational function as such. Okay, you can now pause the video and you can try to sketch this graph on your own. And if you do, this would be the graph that you should produce. How do you do that? First of all, we get our vertical asymptotes from here when x is equals to a negative 2, so that cannot happen, so that's called our vertical asymptote. And next we would want to do a long division. So when we do that, we are able to rewrite the equation in its proper form. And we will also know that this portion here is what we call the horizontal asymptote. So this is the horizontal asymptote, y equals to 1. And subsequently, you need some points to be able to decide how the graph looks like. So you can find the x and the y-intercepts respectively and have it plotted as such. Okay, our next example over here requires us to sketch the rational graph of this form. So we are going to do the same thing and obtain the vertical asymptote by looking at the denominator. So x equals to 2 would be our vertical asymptote, followed by a long division to help us rearrange our form into its proper form, into a proper function, proper rational function. So we would now know that if this is going to be my y coordinate, it can never exactly equals to x minus 1. So I have an asymptote which is a straight line, and in this case is a positively sloping straight line. So we are going to call this an oblique asymptote instead. And we do that obviously by doing the long division. We should have shown this to you earlier, but you try it on your own, please. And our third step would be to find coordinates on this rational graph, and it's easy to obtain the x and y intercepts. Finally, if you are already sketching along, you will realize that this rational graph have some turning points, and finding turning point, you have to use your prior knowledge to go look for it. You can either make dy dx, differentiate it one time equals to 0, use the second order to help you determine if it's a positive, it's a maximum or a minimum turning point. So this is done at calculus level, so you should be able to obtain this if there is a need for us to find turning point. And eventually, this would be the graph that we want to sketch, and then put all the information that you have obtained earlier on this graph. This is a practice that you can do on your own, so please do pause the video and try to see how you could obtain its asymptotes. It's by doing long division, finding its x and y intercepts, putting it all on the graph. And if you do that, this would be the product of the graph that you are supposed to obtain.